All right, what's up? What's up? What's up? We are on Psilocybin in a dungeon. If you see me here, I've locked myself away from the children, from all the distractions. This work at home thing with two young children is not easy, folks. And I know there's a lot of people out there that are dealing with this right now. So you get my you get my commiseration because it's a real fucking challenge. How you doing today, Tristan?
I'm doing great.
Childless, lucky. No, I wouldn't trade my kids for anything. But man,
And is that in LA?
it is. Somebody left these here. Our friend Kristen left these here from the party the other night. I haven't had one of these in years. And I was like, hey,
That's Kentucky Nectar out there.
Kentucky beverage. That's right.
I just want to welcome everybody into On Psilocybin, where we talk about everything under the sun related to being on psilocybin.
And under the floor rafters as well. What's on your mind around mushrooms today, Tristan?
I guess outside hunting them. I'm wondering where they're all at.
Oh yeah. So I went out and checked things on Saturday, Sunday. Yeah, it was Sunday before our sanctuary service. I went out and did a round, and there was really nothing going on. And yesterday I found here in my yard and in several other places quite a bit of those gosh, I keep wanting to call them Cortinarius, but they're an Agarica species, I think. Anyway, it's that species that I told you was kind of an indicator between flushes. I find these growing right amongst ovoid patches, but they fruit generally between the time when ovoids fruit. They're more of a dry weather fruiting mushroom. They get a real cracked cap. I'm so sorry I'm blanking on the name of this mushroom. I know it, but I'm not going to waste my time just trying to dig into it. But
I think it may have spotted some.
yeah, in terms of harm reduction, this is some serious stuff, folks. Again, I do not encourage anybody to do any illegal activity. If you go out and you pick wild psilocybin or you grow psilocybin, you are doing that at your own risk, not at my behest. And if you do that, then you really got to make sure that you know what you're picking. There are absolutely, I did find a deadly Gallerina while I was looking out the other day, and I've at the interface of a log and some mulch. And then these, whatever they are, I'll try to get it for next week. They are prolifically fruiting right now, and they are toxic. They're not deadly, but they are toxic. I had someone message me today with a picture of one saying, hey, is this an ovoid? And it was not. So eager beaver gets an ambulance ride.
And a no cure in the emergency room.
Yeah, no, if it's a Gallerina, you're done. If you eat 2 or 3 of those, it's over. And if you don't die, you're going to have permanent liver damage. So don't mess around, folks. It's serious business.
But when you do find them, this is something we've talked about in the past. It's, is grazing an illegal activity? Has anyone been able to confirm that?
Well, I mean, if you pick them, then that is considered a felony. If you pick them with your teeth and immediately ingest them, I don't know. I have done that, and it is a wonderful experience. But I say, presumably, if someone was to at least get a confession out of you or find a cap in your teeth, then that could be trouble. But no, seriously, folks, many of you know, I have actually been arrested for psilocybin cultivation, possession, and distribution in 2015. It is not something you want to go through. And while things are easing up, thankfully so, There's a lot of decriminalization taking place. There's obviously the stuff in Oregon with legalization. We've got more and more churches coming under the organizations coming under the banner of a church, and I personally think that there are too many options available for people to screw around and do something stupid. And my instance, I've recounted it many times. It was, you prepare for everything, you think you've got it, and just out of nowhere something happens. We had a friend over who asked if we could do a mushroom dose for her. She was a friend of ours for almost 2 years, and yeah, thanks, Courtney. You sent me to the basement. Courtney's messaging me like, "Oh, the background is quite dreary." Like, no shit. Oh, my lovely wife. I love her so much. Anyway, don't fuck around, people. There's plenty of ways to get access to psilocybin legally, more and more all the time. If you're not in a decriminalized zone or a legal zone, I cannot suggest enough to not engage. Courtney, I can't do it. You're messaging me, telling me to turn to the wall. People are just going to see, they're still going to see the rafters. They're going to see all the computer garbage all around us. This is what it is. You asked for it. You got it.
You should have just said that it was a green screen and just been like, what do you all think?
How do you like my green screen? It's a little dingy, a little dirty. Yeah. I guess this platform doesn't offer the green screen thing. We haven't really explored it enough, have we? Wait, no, that's not it. That's not going to do it. So anyway, man, what am I thinking about in terms of psilocybin? I'm thinking about growing myself. I miss growing mushrooms so much. It's very rewarding. It's a beautiful thing to engage in, to go harvest wild psilocybin. And I'm so, so, so grateful for the ovoids that actually came into my life. I had been searching for wild mushrooms for years, never found any wild psilocybin until the spring after we were arrested. 2015, we were arrested. I got rid of all my grow. I never did any more growing at the behest of my lovely wife, who has sent me to the basement tonight. And lo and behold, this April Fool's Day, nonetheless, 9 months after our arrest, without having any psilocybin whatsoever, and it's not even about consuming it. It's about not having any just in my home, in my environment. You grow these things and you become friends with them, you become family with them. And so that was gone. And it was the most truly magical thing to stumble upon a small patch of wild Ovoidea cystidiata that at that point, there had only been a handful of sightings. It wasn't even very commonly known like it is now. And that year, I picked a boatload. And when I say a boatload, I mean a motherfucking boatload of wild ovoids. Not sure we're going to have that kind of year this year. It's already getting a little bit late, and the flushes have been mediocre to say the least. But we're always grateful for whatever we can get of nature's gifts. Again, folks, I am not encouraging illegal activity. We harvest these for the church. They are used under the auspices of that organization in spiritual and religious practices. We have a very strict methodology protocol that we employ. I don't want to break the law. I never wanted to break the law. But I don't know how to not have mushrooms. I don't know how to not engage with this. This has been since my very first consumption, since that time sitting on the toilet where the shadow snaked up the wall. And I was like, oh shit, this is it. I'm home. It's a very, very humble beginning, but it was so powerful. And I knew that night I ended up painting my painting. This isn't one. This is one. This is a fleur de lis, but my style of painting shifted that night forever. I did realistic paintings. And then that night, while on mushrooms, and painting. I had a very spiritual experience. Courtney, was I dreaming of this, Courtney? I'm going to check with you. But wow, did I dream this? That first night when I was painting and sculpting on mushrooms, my first dose ever, everything kept going in a spiral. Everything that I was sculpting, everything that I painted, I could not escape the spiral. You did use the spiral metaphor in talking with your mother the other day, and I wanted to tell you that this was such an important and profound part of my very first psychedelic experience, or my first psilocybin experience. I had LSD before that. Understanding that life is always moving in this spiraling upward motion, that there is a center, and we are swirling around that center, climbing higher and higher and higher in our manifestation, in our personal vibration. And it was truly one of the most powerful spiritual experiences that I've ever had. Here I am. I was 19. I'm 43 now. That first trip still has a major impact on me. I think that is such a testimony to the power of this sacrament. And it is a beautiful, beautiful thing that I don't know how to not engage. What about you, Tristan? Let's talk a little bit about your kind of, right, the draw. What drew you into sacred mushrooms?
Man, so I definitely came at it originally, just keeping up with the things that you see in the newspapers, the articles that you see that, catch these mainstream drifts of wind and their conscious get lifted up, definitely like Johns Hopkins, MAPS, and when you grow up a certain way, you just think, drugs are drugs, and you don't like all drugs are bad, and then you have this box where alcohol is not a drug and caffeine is not a drug.
No, sugar's not a drug.
But one of the most profound things that ever happened, this is years before I met you, years before I even went down to grad school, was going to Central America and knowing what their cultures were, or knowing a little bit about what their cultures were, and seeing these amazing empires that the history is decimated, but knowing that sacred medicines were so ingrained in their lives. I don't know, it's like, in a way, I've always been drawn to whatever consciousness is. There's lots of people out there that you can talk about the superficial things of life with. I really like, diving in kind of with people. It's always been something very meaningful to me. So when you see that these mind-altering, consciousness-expanding plants, for me, just being a white boy from Eastern Kentucky, and then you see this, I don't know, just dynasties, empires, cultures for thousands of years that had these practices that I knew nothing about. I think that was probably the first time that I acknowledged the sacredness of what these things are. Because it's very easy for me to click on a New York Times article and to think that these things are as simple as a compound.
Yeah, I think that's probably my greatest frustration with the current psychedelic movement, is that these nodes of consciousness are being treated like just, like you said, a compound. And it's just not the case. I mean, they communicate with us. They respond to us. Tristan and I were just talking before we hopped on here about mushrooms responding to our energy, to our stress. I've seen it undoubtedly so many times. The last time I went looking for ovoids, like they told me, there's a certain kind of, like, not necessarily a voice, it's more like a feeling that I get. And like they told me the two places where they were going to be, and I got there and they were there. And the other places that I went, they're like, I could feel that they weren't there. And when I went there, they weren't there, you know. So to just, I hesitate to say dismiss, because we're not really dismissing the power of the plants, but we are kind of treating it like another tablet or capsule or, Western medicine.
Well, I think we are dismissing the plants, because when we take something like hydrocodone, where does it come from? Well, the original derivation is that of an opium poppy that turns into this, but yet we don't speak of this. We don't speak of what this plant did.
That's a very good point.
And then within this, when you talk about psilocybin, you're getting to the place where we think that this is of the pharmaceutical industry, not of nature. And that's a kind of to me, that's the backstabbing that we do in the exploitation of how the pharmaceutical industry works.
That's so true. On the last meeting with the Oregon Health Authority around the religious use of psilocybin under Measure 109, excuse me, that's that's directly what I brought into the conversation. I started to really, the call before that, I started getting really kind of bent out of shape, because I thought, why is the medical establishment telling the religious practitioner how to use their sacrament? You all got this from us. We didn't get the mushrooms from the pharmacy. The pharmacy got the mushrooms from the spiritual practitioners. And so it's them that should be asking us how to apply these medicines or sacraments or substances or however you want to label them. And it's just, again, it's that kind of the arrogance of Western medicine, in that, oh, you don't like your body? Well, then let's just modify it. I mean, to a certain extent, yes, it's awesome. Science is incredibly valuable when we can make so much improvements on ourselves and life and Ray. But if we jump over the source of all that, and we don't honor the source of that, then it pulls the spirituality of it. And no one can, you can talk about it all you want to, like it's not a spiritual experience, but when you engage with the mushroom, it's spiritual experience, even if you don't understand it that way. And I have worked with so many people who have had a weird, scary, challenging experiences, and through discussing it through this lens, we're able to come to an understanding that, oh wow, that was a profoundly mystical experience, and that's what we're going for here.
Oh, and even within that same vein, it's we, in so many societies, not only here in the United States but across the globe, we, in the pursuit of this developed nation, you end up getting this detachment from connection with ourselves, a detachment from connection with the fellow human beings around us, and definitely in these concrete jungles, it's very easy to get a detachment from Mother Earth.
For sure. Well, it's an incredible irony that the majority of the wild psilocybin is found in these urban environments. So what are they trying to teach us? What are they trying to point us in the direction of? Okay, listeners out there that want to join in this conversation, anything you want to bring into it? Maybe you got some questions about your experiences. Maybe you've got some questions about the mushrooms themselves. Maybe you just want to share some of your experiences, whatever it is. You want to challenge us on our viewpoint, you're welcome to do that. Maybe you are a pharmacist who thinks this is nothing but a psychological experience. Hamilton Morris, he's a great example of someone like that. He himself said, even in that interview where he was interviewing the guy who created penis envy, talked about how fascinated he was that there are scientists that have a spiritual perspective. That quantum physicist that I spoke with last week, it was really powerful. He told me early on in the conversation, he was sharing kind of what led him into that field of study, and he said that he realized in his early years in college that the inexplicable nature of this, and we break down pieces and we just keep getting smaller and smaller, it just keeps going and going and going. It's as big as it is small. And he said that one of the most profound realizations that he had was that life is a spiritual, energetic experience. We are not material objects. Materialism is like such a, I want to say it's shallow. It's such a shallow perspective, especially now we do have science that shows us very clearly that there's more space in me than there is solid matter, that this concrete wall has more space than solidity to it.
Something that I have always thought of is the eyes of other animals, the energetic connections that they make with the same plane that we exist on and walk around on. Like a snake is able to see different wavelengths and sense different wavelengths that we can't. Cat's eyes, birds are able to feel the
electromagnetic field.
Yes, that's the word I was looking for.
Bats and sonar. People can teach themselves sonar. Birds that can see for thousands of feet, with precision, accuracy. It's an amazing world we live in. Something so Courtney got everybody all high on rose petals the other day. I must tell a story on you, Courtney. Did Cassie go down to that meeting?
No, she did not.
Okay. So Courtney made some rose muffins, and they were delicious, but she realized when they were in the oven that the recipe called for fresh rose petals and not dry rose petals. So instead of using 3 cups of fresh rose petals, she used 3 cups of dry rose petals. And for those of you who don't know it, roses are actually mildly psychoactive. And beyond that, roses, I later learned through a Reiki worker that was here when all this happened, because like the people that ate the cupcakes were like, why do I feel like this? And so we looked into it, and she divulged that she overdosed people on rose petals. But the rose petals have the highest electromagnetic frequency of any flower. And when she said that, whatever people could say, like you're just talking smack here, but I've always, I wouldn't say always, but I have noticed that I feel different around roses. And now that she said that in terms of the EMF, it kind of clicked, like, oh, it is like, that's what it is. It's a vibration that I'm picking up on. And I know beyond shadow of a doubt that psilocybin has helped me become extra sensitive to electromagnetic frequencies. I know that. It's a huge part of what is kind of the work that I do in the space, is tuning into that. Excuse me. And I am starting to think that it is one of, if not the kind of foundational element in healing, is getting people back on the right wavelength. And there's a lot that can be explored here. The conversations are information around negative and positive ions and being in the city and how you're forest bathing and how that. I think that's a big part of what's happening is it's tuning our frequency back to its original state. We
Oh,
get out.
and the thing is that when I hear you say this, you're like, working with the mushrooms has allowed me to tap into this. Um, there's a part of my maybe my ego. I don't know how to say it. It's like just wanting to hit like a bullshit button, and then
Mm-hmm.
like I think about different things like. Uh, there was a paper that was published a few years ago talking about memories being stored outside of the brain.
Mm.
And there was a part of me whenever I first like started reading into this, I was like, bullshit. There's no way. Like, this
Mm.
makes no sense on like how I grew to think.
Mm-hmm.
And then learning that it was true. I think the thing is that it's so evolving and we don't know what we don't know.
Mm.
And as we progress forward and as hopefully technology advances with that, it's amazing the small things that you know that you're speaking of that has been talked about for thousands of years but has never been able to be put on paper necessarily in the
Yeah, but
same way.
it's been able to be put into practice though, and that's where it's a little tricky for me, and where I get a chuckle out of it. It's like we're building all of these technologies to do things that we can already do. Like the internet is modeled off of like nature, our brains, the universe, mycelium, telepathy is 100% a real thing. And I know, like, I was such a bullshitter on all these things. Like, yeah, bullshit, no way. And I finally had to concede because I just kept having so many experiences that were absolutely real. Even you, like I mentioned, just asking you where you were at, and just like I feel like over the last couple of days, I can feel you, and I feel like I can feel Tristan. I need to feel like what's up with Tristan, and those intuitions that we get, those just the just our the senses that we experience are we don't give them enough credit. We dismiss it. We're like, oh yeah, it's just whatever, and it's not. These are talents, skills, abilities that we can actually hone. There has been research in the 40s and 50s that showed very clearly that psychedelics actually do increase extrasensory perception. It was well documented, and most of that was destroyed. So, I think I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. I don't think we're gonna have a choice as long as we keep moving in the path of legalization and access, that we will start to see the reality of what we're talking about.
For sure. And there was a comment by Kevin saying that everything is of nature, and I think that there's truth in that. That we have the even plastic is of dinosaur.
Mhm.
And there's also parts though. If when you talked about like forest bathing, the moment that we stain wood, our body doesn't connect with the wood the same way as it does whenever it was raw, whenever it was an unstained piece of timber,
Mm.
much less the energetic connection that we get from it whenever it's still a living organism.
Mm.
Um, and speaking of the wavelengths, the concrete, it is natural, but put your bare feet on concrete or put your bare feet in the dirt. um, you know, there's a purpose in both, but the connection that we as an organism have with each one is a little
Mm.
different.
Mm-hmm. Did I ever tell you about that friend of mine that came to Jamaica who had not been barefoot for something like 25 years, and after his first dose, after the peak, I took him downstairs. I took him down into the grass, and he was just like, what the fuck have I been missing? Oh my God. It's baffling to me when I see people who just wear shoes all the time. And yeah, you can make all the Kentucky jokes you want. That's fine. I don't care. I want to be barefoot as much as possible. It is a real connection to this living planet that we are a part of.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely amazing because like I will try to go barefoot and then I'll be like, man, my feet are cold. And I'll go and like put on some socks or maybe some house shoes or something.
It's okay. You need to toughen those feet up though, son.
Oh, for sure.
I'm surprised. Hold on, you're from Pikeville. You can't walk barefoot in the snow.
Oh, listen, back in my younger days, I could walk barefoot on the gravel. Got soft.
Again, I love the fact that you and I are just a couple of Kentucky boys here talking about this thing from firsthand experience.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing because like, you know, I'm so honored to one be a part of Sanctuary, but also that Sanctuary's in a state that gets no, I don't want to say respect, attention, the acknowledgement, the interest. Like you see Sage Institutes throughout the U.S. in these larger urban centers, and you know this state is it's a beautiful place to be born and raised at, but I mean it's very similar to rural Appalachia in the ways that just such a different life, I guess you could say.
Oh, for sure, for sure. Yo, Baba Booey, I am drinking an L81, a late one, most caffeinated drink out there. Whoa, not used to these things. Um, when I was in Eastern Kentucky as a kid, I used to go with my dad. He was an insurance salesman. He'd travel around the state and sell insurance to state workers. And I remember being out there and having to read insurance policies to road workers who were 40 years old, 50 years old, and couldn't read.
Yeah.
And there is like there's a certain tragedy about that, but there's also kind of this. I've had this term that I will probably get many arrows thrown at me for using this right now. But I've had this term in my head for years, the new indigenous, right? And we talk about indigenous cultures like, this kind of romantic, far off, long lost thing. And those cultures then, they are long lost. They're gone. They're way out. But indigenous, maybe I could look it up right now to get the actual textbook definition. But if we are born in this environment, we are born here, this is who we are, then are we not the indigenous in this era? So anyway, they kind of like thinking about reflecting on that. What seemed really very sad to me, originating or occurring naturally in a particular place, native. So I ain't wrong about saying I'm an indigenous Kentuckian. Anyway, there was something beautiful in that, but there was also something really sad in that whole thing. Another thing, kind of an example that I'd like to bring up, we just had this article come out in the Leo, the Louisville local magazine, nothing huge, but the Louisville Eccentric Observer is what it's called. And they've been sharing the story on their Facebook page and Instagram account for the last week or however long it's been out, 2 weeks now. And yesterday was the first time that I saw anyone come into the conversation and say, basically, you all, not basically, it's a strip, you all are blasphemous. This is blasphemous to say that taking a mushroom connects you with God. And I think there was one other person that said something about worshiping a mushroom, worshiping the mushroom, right? And that's something that people have said to me a couple of times before. And I think in part that is kind of this local ignorance of a place like Kentucky that is so deeply rooted in these traditional Christian beliefs, which are actually not traditional, which are adopted from and just twisted by slave owners. And so it really just has me, it had me thinking of how we can help people understand that this is actually more a part of who you are than the religion that you are currently a part of. You know, like the Jesus on the cross, like that's a pretty new symbol. That's a pretty new understanding of God, if you will. And I want to be patient and kind with people, and I don't want to insult people, and just help people understand that this is not some obscure culty excuse for people to do drugs. I don't even consider the mushroom a drug. Like when I think of it, when it never clicks when someone says we're doing drugs or like the mushroom is a drug. I'm just like, it's not a drug. It's a mushroom. Like and I think that's kind of a tricky lexical hurdle that we've built for ourselves. Drug, as I understand it, originates from a German word for dried herb. And now we have, modified and created all these different drugs, the oxys and all the stuff that is so far away from the dried herb. And we do not give any recognition to the plants themselves very often. And that's a big problem. It's a mushrooms are food. I hear you, Midwest psilocybin man. They are indeed. Michael Pollan, that's one of the bridges that he built in his first book, or I think it was the essay that he wrote actually that preceded How to Change Your Mind, exploring, mushrooms are, like you're saying, they're a part of our food system. And so is cacao. Cacao is a psychoactive substance. It alters our brain chemistry, but we don't consider that a drug. So, just interesting exploring these boundaries where something becomes perceived as a negative substance. And it's all just culture. It's all
boxes.
It's all
What's
boxes.
not a drug? I say that to people frequently.
Well, like Dennis McKenna would say, I'm drugs. We're made of drugs. Like, how are you going to talk about like drugs as if they're a bad thing when like it's all drugs?
Yeah, I mean the same adrenaline that comes in the form of needle keeps you alive. Like,
Absolutely.
It's yeah. I didn't
Yeah,
know.
and that's what I actually ended up saying to the guys. Like, well, if you think that consuming a mushroom is a sin, then what are we going to do about our breath? Because you can get higher from your breath than anything. Your lungs, we're starting to think that our lungs produce DMT, the most powerful psychoactive substance, period. And your body's making it. So, and of course, he didn't respond to that. But that's okay too.
No, it also, it's crazy because once you take off those shackles of thought and you're no longer caged into what your Catholic upbringing had you believe was a religious paradigm, and anything outside of that was wrong or blasphemous.
Mm.
To me, it's just so disrespectful to so many other cultures that are way older.
It's disrespect to the God that you claim to believe in.
True.
Like, I mean, like, where do you think the fucking mushrooms came from? Like, they're completely
The apple fell
non-toxic.
down, rotted in a mushroom. A psilocybin mushroom came out of it.
The snake took a dump, and the mushroom came out, and therefore it's evil.
Yeah.
But don't you think that these shackles are what people are actually really comfortable with? Like that's the fear,
Mhm.
is that, and I understand it. Like when I was 19 years old and the pedophilia scandal broke out on the Catholic Church. If I would have been 40 and still fully invested in that ideology, I probably would have had a lot harder time breaking away from it, because this is how you understand existence. Like it's not like it's not like this is just a side note for people's religious beliefs, their political views. They're under these boxes, like you said. Like this is the house of cards that everybody has built around them, and we're all very vested in our house of cards. And it's terrifying to think that what would happen were it to fall. But the reality is that when you kick that house of cards down, you find out that it was actually your prison, and that there is so much more to explore, to be able to, like, the impossible task is to stop labeling things. You ever do that? You ever play with this? In mushroom space, I have often, multiple times, and after that peak in that window, couple hour window, where you're just kind of in this observation mode and in awe, like standing with the trees and all the stuff. I could name all the stuff. It just loses its name, and it just becomes what it is. And to try to bring that into our daily lives, particularly with people, like when we meet people and we start to put them in boxes up, okay, you're from Kentucky, you got this color skin, you've got this style of hair, you wear these kind of clothes, you drive that kind of car, blah, 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 blah. We put people, and like if we could just practice blank slating, particularly with people, imagine what that opens up, the opportunities. It's like all these ideas of how things work. And the reality is we have such a such a very minimal understanding of what's really going on here.
I think, going back to what we were referring to as shackles, that within that, there's a control thing, and it's because you have this feeling that you're correct, and in being correct, someone else is wrong.
Mm.
And to me, that is on your path at that point. You have this illusion that you're walking on a platform versus those around you, and that creates this separateness that you at this point, because you're on the righteous path.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
um,
mm-hmm.
and so
Yeah.
we create this separateness, and then from there, you know there's so many ways that manifests, and there's so many different societies that this manifest out of.
I just want to say that you're right. You're right. You're right.
We
Just
don't know. Yeah, no, Kevin. Yeah, I don't know.
you are right, Tristan. You're so right. Oh, Courtney, it's okay. Your
Some
muffins were
people.
your muffins were great. Nobody got hurt. Everybody had a good time. It was a good laugh. They were tasty, but that was a lot of rose.
How are you thinking about Mother's Day coming up?
Mother's
Appreciation for the
Day.
mamas.
Yeah, yeah. Mad love for the mamas. Um, so we have Derby and Mother's Day back to back this year. That's a unique thing. So we're going to be just celebrating all the way through. Yes, they were freaking delicious, Courtney. Thank you. You are right as well. You and Tristan are both right. Kevin's right. I don't even give a fuck. I'm just here. And that's right too. Now, Mother's Day, man. I don't know if you know who Thomas Merton is. Speaking of Kentucky, you know Thomas Merton, Tristan. Thomas Merton was a monk, a Catholic monk, but he was not your typical Catholic monk. He hung out with Hunter Thompson. He would sneak out of the monastery in Bardstown and come up to Bardstown Road and get trashed. And he had several mistresses. He got a Korean lady pregnant. He was a different kind of monk for sure. But he wrote a lot of really beautiful literature, kind of philosophical musings on the nature of God. He is the individual whom the Dalai Lama credited saying, were it not for Thomas Merton, I would, something like he would have thought that Christianity was kind of like just a big waste. Those weren't exact words, but anyway, the Dalai Lama credited Thomas Merton for helping him find real value in Christianity. And he wrote a wonderful kind of novella. Not really a novella, it's not the right word. It's more like a long essay, like a 30-page essay or something on Mother's Day. And he was in Cuba, and when he wrote this piece, and it was Mother's Day when he wrote it, and he noted that in Cuba they don't celebrate Mother's Day, but in Cuba they honor their mothers every day. And that had him questioning whether or not these holidays that we create put such a hyper focus and really like delegate all of that value to that single day, and then the rest of the year we just kind of forget about it. Mothers, fathers, children, like all of it. And that really rang true to me. I've always felt like, for a long time, I have felt that the kind of fetishism that we have around various holidays almost gives us an excuse to behave badly on other days,
So for
So
St. Patrick's Day, that's a day where you probably just go out and
you
end up
behave
behaving
badly
badly then.
Yeah. I love how the saint, the day of the saint is the day that we drink. My son's birthday is on St. Patrick's Day too. God knows what he's going to get to in it as he gets older. But I think it's worth considering. And this, I'll just say, since you brought it up, Courtney's birthday was recent. We had a celebration for her on Saturday, and this Saturday was the first time that I have actually ever made any legitimate effort to celebrate a birthday. I grew up in a family. I've been wanting to kind of make a little video and talk about this because it really has been a pretty profound, slow awakening for me. I grew up in a family where your birthday was completely devalued. It didn't matter. Just get the fuck over yourself and move on. Catholic mentality. You should feel guilty for being born. Why are we gonna celebrate your birth? We all have to take care of you. And like mushrooms have, for sure, there have been so many mushroom trips that I've come out of and feeling such a deep love for Courtney, is one of the main people, but really like so many people, and humanity itself. But those experiences have slowly helped me kind of break those shackles of perception that were ingrained in me as a child. So, while Mother's Day is a little bittersweet for me, my mom disowned me basically because she always told me growing up she wanted me to be a priest. I just want my baby. You'd make such a good priest. You're so spiritual. I just want you to be a priest. And then I became a psychedelic priest, and she's like, "Oh well, in that case, we can't talk." And among other things. But it is a little bit bittersweet for me. But I definitely plan on celebrating the mother of my children, and even my divorced mother of my children, and even my mom. I probably won't give her a call, but I'll just send her love from afar. And there are a lot of women that have been just really wonderful motherly examples to me. Spoke with a beautiful friend over in the UK today who has been such a just a shining example of what a playful, loving, joyful mother looks like. And not having that from my own mother um, perhaps allows me to appreciate it even more, you know.
No, you said that growing up, like certain holidays, you know, for you, it was like birthdays, like weren't really celebrated. It's always amazing, uh, in that same vein, when you do see, I don't know, just like celebration, I guess, in many ways. You know,
Mhm.
there's a line there, maybe, but it's still just like people coming together. Or that was definitely a tangent away from that. I was definitely thinking more of like just people who maybe go overboard for Christmas. Like I look
Mhm.
at it, or Halloween, and I'm
Mhm.
like, you know, you may be a little bit crazy, but that looks sweet.
And yeah,
Um,
at least you're celebrating. At least you're like engaging in celebration, which is the opposite of what I grew up with.
mhm.
So I can see that value. You know, I did want to say this for anybody out there that's listening or cares. These things are still so young. These on psilocybins, and plan on doing them for quite some time. But I missed last week because I went and um, officiated over a wedding for some members of Sanctuary Church. It's crazy to think that that's kind of the stuff I'm doing right now, but it's also really awesome. It gave me it has provided me some amazing opportunity to reflect on my own marriage, um, and what that really means. So big up to Kai Misha and Justice. You guys were wonderful. But what was really really wonderful about that whole thing is the family was so obviously in love with each other. Like aunts and uncles and cousins, and everybody fucking loved each other. And it was so powerful. And you know what else they did? This whole family does mushrooms together. Like every now and then they go and have a family dose of mushrooms. And you can see the bonding that brings about. And it's so beautiful and so powerful. And it had me coming back. Like I ended up we were going to do it on psilocybin last week, and my flight got canceled Sunday night, and I ended up driving 14 hours from Orlando, and so I was in no shape to be public. Um, and so anyway, seeing that, being a part of that, I so certainly brought a lot of that home, and that helped to fuel that birthday celebration for Courtney. It's going to help to fuel this Mother's Day and Derby and just everything. You know, I want to. I didn't grow up in a family where we showed that we cared. Didn't show that you really liked each other, not just love. It's like there's that whole like, I love you, I'll come bail you out of jail. But I want to live in families. I want to be part of communities where people like really actually fucking like each other, despite all the you know eccentricities that we might have. And
Or
so,
even one of the like, you know, whether it's your parents, your grandmother, or grandfather in specific areas, and depending on that upbringing, it's like if you say "I love you," they're like they don't say it back, and they're like, "You should know I do." That's the response.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
You know.
yeah. Well, I mean, to a certain extent, I understand that, but when it is not expressed tenderly, that's the thing, is that, and we talked about this in our Sunday service yesterday, that word tenderness came up. And I thought it was a really powerful word, because when you want to show someone that you love them, like you treat them tenderly. You acknowledge that they have kind of their own sensitivities, and that they're just coming with their own framework that we respect. And like, that's not what I saw. It was always just like, you're fucking wrong and you don't believe in Jesus, get the hell out of here. And so, that's cool. That's an option as well. But man, I tell you, that whole thing was so powerful. That whole weekend there was really beautiful. And just really, really grateful. I feel so much gratitude and love for our community at Sanctuary. Right now might be a good time to just say that in the Sanctuary community, Courtney and I are starting a new program. It's not just for Sanctuary members, but Sanctuary members get a significant discount. It is going to be a subscription-based integration workshop. This is going to be really active and engaged. It's not going to be just people talking about their experiences. Courtney is going to be leading a lot of authentic relating games. And for those of you who don't know about the Psilocybin Says podcast, we just released an episode today that was a wonderful example of one of these authentic relating games. It was really powerful in this podcast that we did. I found it very powerful that going into the recording, I was having such a low day. I was feeling really crappy about myself and just like the way things kind of were working out. And through this authentic relating game, I got back to my authentic self through the questions that Courtney proposed. And she's so good at doing this. She's so good at facilitating these conversations that help people really get into like what they're feeling and why they're feeling it, and then finding a way to feel different and to identify with a different feeling and gravitate towards that. So that episode's called Focus on the Feeling. And then I will be doing more of kind of the ins and outs of the mushroom space, talking about the mechanics of it, talking about how to really prepare for your trips as possible, different ways of processing, and this stuff will be modeled. So again, it's not just going to be a conversation. It's going to be an interactive experience, and those will be every week. It is what, Courtney? Hit me on the note there. I think it's Fridays at 2 Eastern. We're going to be doing these. So if anybody's interested in participating in this kind of community, it's going to be a community thing. Courtney's going to lead 1 week, and I'll lead 1 week, and then rotate it like that. Oh, Stephen, I fucking love you. Stephen listened to that podcast apparently today. He's commenting on how she turned me around. Yeah, I've said it before. Courtney's one of the only people that I have been able to really easily listen to whatever she's got. She's got it good. I told her before I came down here, except for this basement thing, girl, you put me in the basement. You were wrong about that. I told her that I listened to her more than I listened to myself. And I think that's probably true. I listened to her advice more than I listened to my own advice about me. So I am so blessed and so grateful. And everybody out there that has a partner or friends or is just engaging with gratitude and even appreciation, maybe even has more meat to it. Like gratitude is powerful and to be grateful, but when you hear that word appreciation, I feel like there's even more of that kind of like all encompassing, like I value you so much that I will do anything that I can to be of service to you. And that's just kind of the life that I want to continue to grow into. And mushrooms have been such a important tool in all of this, you all. I can't express any much more strongly the power of this sacrament to connect us with our authentic self, to connect us with nature, life, the electromagnetic field, the energy that is around us. It is a beautiful, beautiful, powerful tool. Um, so don't do anything illegal, but if you can find a legal, safe way to engage with psilocybin, then I strongly encourage it.
Go to the Smithsonian and get some chocolate bars.
What?
Isn't that like DC? They have it's decriminalized there, I guess. And
Can we talk about how fucked up it is that in the nation's capital,
oh,
cannabis is legal and psychedelics are decriminalized, and
well,
everywhere
see,
else?
I bet this is just in my brain the way my brain works. I think that all the politicians are probably just dosing down there,
Mm,
and they don't
I'd say
need.
there's some. I think most of the politicians are blowing coke up their nose, if I had to guess.
Why not both?
I just don't think I'm seeing enough conscientious politicians with a perspective and like an infinite perspective to indicate to me that there's much psychedelic use going on there. I could be wrong. I
think
very
you're
often
right.
am, but I'd be hard pressed to believe. Now, I've known a number of law enforcement officers. I know of a senator who has taken mushrooms. So it's out there, and this is something that I think I think we all know how valuable that would be. Were our politicians to actually engage in psychedelic practices. But you know, it's like that Bill Hicks. Please, everybody, anybody, go watch that Bill Hicks stand-up bit where he's talking about eating mushrooms in a field and heaven's in a cow's ass. He gets into this whole spiel on how like the psychedelics aren't going to be the drug of choice for the politicians because how are we going to perpetuate the arms race in the military industrial complex when we realize that we're bombing ourselves? And I think there's a lot of truth there.
Okay, this is completely speculative, and my brain just jumped into this. Okay, so of all the presidents, if you were to say like one of them may have stumbled upon some mushrooms and ate them,
JFK.
That's where I was at.
I don't know.
You got a happy second?
When was he assassinated? Do you know what year that was?
Before my time.
Yeah, but I mean, it was after Wasson and Sabina, I think. Who would be a number two? Definitely Trump. Definitely Donald Trump. He's definitely eating. No. Man, that's an interesting thing to think about. I would have liked to have said Obama, but I can't. I don't have the same perspective on him that I had long ago. Benjamin Franklin. Benjamin Franklin he was not a president, but he's the only person that was not a president that's on money, and he's definitely one of the coolest.
Harriet Tubman's now on some money.
Oh, did they end up doing that? Did they end up doing it?
If they didn't, they got me.
So here's an interesting thing to bring up, though. Stephen asked if about indigenous tribal use of sacred mushrooms pre-colonialism. There is very little recorded evidence of Native North Americans using psilocybin. From what I understand, there are some anecdotal stories of the Cherokee tribe in southern U.S. using cubensis. There is a record of the Hopi using Amanita muscaria, but for all of the other native psilocybin mushrooms, assuming that they were here 500, 600 years ago, there is no record of indigenous consumption of azarescens, cyanescens, Ovoidea stidiata, or any of the others. And also, folks, I know our friend at Midwest Mushrooms brought this into the conversation a few weeks back. There has recently been a new psilocybin species identified in Iowa and northern Indiana. Along that kind of latitude. It is in
Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania. It's in the complex of Psilocybin mexicana, which is, I don't know if these are specifically, but mexicana is a truffle-forming mushroom. It has a long, rich history of use in Central and South America, or Central America, sorry, by the Mazatec people there. Maybe somewhere, somehow we'll find this out. But what it raises an interesting question of is, could there have been use by founding fathers, or very early? One of the things that I read several ethnographies and biographies of Europeans who were kidnapped by Native Americans, and speaking of the shackles that we wear, very often when these white folk were kidnapped, they didn't want to leave. They wanted to stay with the Native Americans because, I mean, just think about it. It's a hell of a lot more fun already. Doesn't it sound like? Don't have to wear all those crazy uptight clothes. You learn how to grow your own food, learn how to ride horses bareback and skin buffalo and sleep in their carcasses when it's cold and shit. I don't know. But seriously, though, there are plenty of recorded examples of white men and women who were taken hostage, and when given the option, refused to go back into the European way of living. It says a whole lot about kind of the culture that we came out of. They really truly, the Puritans that came over really truly believed that the forest is where the devil was. It was part of their mission to cut down the forest because that's where evil lurked. How counterintuitive is that? And it gives quite a bit of, I feel like, context for understanding why there would still be people who think mushrooms are blasphemous, right? Just circle back there. Of course, if it's coming from nature and it causes you to have crazy visions, then it's got to be bad. If it's not somehow man-made and sterile and delivered to you on the silver platter.
Well, so when it comes to a lot of the different tribes of North America, I mean, there's so little that truly was able to pass through the filter and the destruction.
Oh my God, so much was lost. So much was lost. Even let's go to Central America. I was reading today, I was looking at the incredible website. Everybody, please go check it out. Carl DeBorgi, it's mushroomstone.com. This guy is an incredible art historian who has clearly shown that sacred mushrooms were used in almost every religious tradition, period. Buddhist, Hindu. I think Islam is the only one that there's no real blatant depictions of psilocybin mushrooms in there. But what I was going back over was the early encounters of the conquistadors when they experienced the mushroom eaters, and how they thought they were possessed by demons. They thought they were praying to demons. What was the other big thing? I'm sure most people know that Catholicism refers to this, communion as the body of Christ, or the body of God, if you will. And when the conquistadors came here and found the Mayan using mushrooms and calling it, in translation, the flesh of God, they believed that was a devil-inspired perversion of the true Catholic faith, right? So all the way on the other side of the world, with these people that never had any contact with, somehow the devil got over there and convinced them to eat mushrooms because the devil wanted to like oppose Christianity. It's just absolutely bonkers how these again, I love the idea of the shackles of ideology prevent us from having not just a balance, but just a fucking curiosity, man. You know, it's like how much wisdom was completely and utterly destroyed from Native North Americans, Central South Americans, because these Catholics came over here and said, well, you don't believe what we do, so what you believe is from the devil, so we're gonna fucking destroy it all. It's insane.
And see, the reason I like that's something that I said was like, when we say that these sacred plants, we don't know of them being used in all of these states in which they grow, and it's just like we don't know, and we act like we know. Did they have number 2 pencils and big pens and
well, for a long time we
maintained
that there was no written language, and that we know that's not true for a lot of these tribes and a lot of these early peoples. Just let me point out that I was wrong. Thank you, Eric. It's also in Ohio, and it's the Aztecorum complex, not Mexicana. So Aztecorum does not produce sclerotia. I was wrong publicly. I love when that happens. Thanks for the correction, though. But yeah, tons of information lost.
See, and I appreciate that Kevin says we don't know. I have faith.
Man, faith. That's an interesting word, you know. What is faith when we talk about faith in terms of in these very kind of stringent religious boxes? Like I have faith in Jesus. I have my faith in my religion.
So I had a friend once, you know, I was outside drinking some pops real late at night a couple years back. And this guy, very, very Protestant. And like, I don't know why, every single time I get a little drunk and it's way too late at night and I'm looking up at the stars with someone, I just start like going into it. And he told me that it was his thought that whenever I asked about life off of Earth and just these different things, that the stars of the sky were put there to tempt your faith.
What? Oh wow, that is such an interesting perspective. What are these people going to do? I'm so curious what some of the explanations are for the recent acknowledgement, and I'm so glad you brought up the stars, and Kevin's talking about outer space there earlier. You know, the acknowledgement by the Pentagon of recovered off-world vehicles, the recent acknowledgement in a 1,500-page document that came out about 4 to 6 weeks ago of abductions, of radiation burns, of pregnancies.
Mm-hmm.
That, like, I think there is, of course, there will be people who just like, again, just like chalk this up to the devil. It's the devil did the dinosaurs. Yep, Kevin, the devil made the dinosaurs.
Get the God back in school.
The devil made the aliens and all that stuff. But I don't think that there's anything that can shake up our ontological structures more than that. And now that we have this, like we actually have this documented, released from the Pentagon, you can go look it up. There's press releases out there. What are we going to do with this, you all? This is something that is not really being talked about. I mean, you do hear some kind of blurbs from it, but as individuals, like, isn't this something really important that we start to explore? I'm going to admit that I've been on TikTok a little bit here lately. And there's a bunch of cool alien shit on TikTok. It's to me, I think that this is like the frontier of modern discovery. We are witnessing in real time. And I mean, there's like plenty of stuff that could be totally faked, obviously, but there's also a lot of stuff out there. Fighter pilots who give testimony of these objects that, appear and disappear and move at crazy speeds, go below the surface of the ocean and come back up and hover and follow them and all this kind of stuff. Like, this is so important, I feel like, that we start to really talk about in our society. And to me, it's very interesting that at the same time, when we have psychedelics coming back into the public discourse, that we're having more and truthful exposure about these other encounters. The Mayan tradition is one. There's many African traditions that maintain that the knowledge that they have had of the solar system came from these travelers. I don't know. Emilio's asking a great question on whether or not they could be from a different planet or a different dimension. Don't know. Seems like it's all possible, right? Rick Strassman and the DMT studies, they're actually studying the entities that they're encountering in DMT space. There are scientific studies of the entities in psychedelic space. Shane Moss, I don't know if y'all know Shane Moss, a comedian, does a lot of psychedelic work. He and I have been pretty good friends. He facilitated several retreats with us in Jamaica. We did a documentary, worked on a little bit together, called Psychonautics. Encourage everybody to go see that if they haven't. But he has this story, and he is such a science guy. Like, he doesn't get into the woo woo shit. But he has this story that he has told multiple times publicly. I'm fine to share it. Of when he would go into DMT space, that he would encounter this purple lady with these gold robes and ropes and all this kind of stuff, and that she would express her love for him, and then have blah, 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 and he had this work to do, and da, 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 da. And so this happened a few times, but he didn't make anything of it because it was just his own inside of his own head. Well, he goes and takes DMT to some kind of scientist friend of his. I forget what he was, but he was involved in very high level sciences. And he takes this guy some DMT, and he's going to sit with him and help this guy have his first DMT trip. And so guy goes in, hits the bong 3 times, falls back, and he's in DMT space, and he's kind of talking. And Shane swears that he never gave this guy any type of information. He just, because he does. Shane's very smart and very intentional about his psychedelic work. He knows how influential people are, so he doesn't try to influence people. He just tries to help people have a safe space, and okay, now go. And so the guy goes into the DMT space and says, "Whoa, Shane, they love you here." And Shane's like, "Oh yeah." He's like, "Yeah, there's this purple lady with these gold robes, and she fucking loves you. She said for me to tell you hello." And he talks like it just rattled his world, because where'd she come from? How does she? And I think this stuff is fascinating. It's going to be hard for us to bring this into, I think, the common discourse around psychedelics for a while. But I'm already so deep in the psychedelic hole that I'm cool with it.
I just wanted to kind of say there's 2 things. One is, can you imagine if that study of people who were like, they're studying the beings of the DMT space, how many people would sign up for that on Arrowhead? Like, just thousands of dosers just filling up this thing. And 2, it is no surprise at all that you got on TikTok hoping to find mushroom talk, and you ended up straight into alien talk.
Yeah. There's not a lot of psychedelic stuff on TikTok. It's still pretty fluffy and kind of weird political shit. I did it because of Gary V. Gary V said to get on TikTok, and I listened to that guy. I have not been posting like he says, just because I don't know. I still struggle. I was doing pretty good on putting up YouTube videos for a while, and I enjoy it, but I needed a break. I'm not going to subject myself to this kind of demands of social media.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like none of us should do that. I feel like all of us should engage when we want to engage, and when it doesn't feel good and you need a break, then take a break, man. It's like, the people that really value the information that you bring to the world, they'll wait, they'll hang out, they'll come find other ways to interact and engage, but that's like kind of what the motivation behind it is to continue trying to build a community, things like this where we can come together and talk and share ideas. I see Amelia saying it's hard to come into the mainstream with shit like that. People run for the hills. You got to make them dip a toe and ease it in sometimes. Yeah, I feel you, man. I'm knee deep though, dog. I'm knee deep. I don't know how to do it. I don't know what to do. They're just gonna, if they're not able to talk about it, then they're probably gonna have to, get some space from me. Maybe, I don't know.
Is that the weirdest thing though? Like, I recently had a friend come down, and he asked me. He said, I think it was, would you, if you had it to do over again, would you have ever taken psychedelics? And it's such an interesting thing because when you stand in that water, it's almost like it's hard to imagine yourself not thinking like this or like in that way. But then it's to some people it's like they would run for the hills, like it's so foreign. I kind of like, what do you think, what does Eric know, no psychedelic, no mushroom in Eric's life, what does that look like, and then how would you answer that?
Man, it's interesting. The first thing that comes to my mind is seeing myself in middle school when I was like dead set on drugs are bad. And I was a quirky motherfucker, dude. I wore some weird clothes. I behaved, I was eccentric even then. And I think the difference though is I think I would not have the compassion. I grew up in a homophobic, racist world, and absolutely psychedelics had a huge role to play in breaking down those barriers for me. It was also, being exposed to different lifestyles and different ethnicities and seeing that it's all fear. But it's proven that one of the most measurable effects of psychedelics is that they increase our level of openness to new ideas, openness to new cultures, new lifestyles, blah blah blah. And I have to think that without the mushrooms, I would probably be a lot more dogmatic in my thinking around probably everything, like everything: sexuality, ethnicity, jobs, and religion, blah blah blah. But at the same time, I feel like, part of me would be very much the same as well. Um, that raises the question to me: Are was I psychedelic before I was psychedelic? Now, I just said that my painting, 100% changed. I don't have very many good examples down here, but I painted therapeutically and attempted professionally for quite a while, from the time I was, 15, and I had a very, standard way of painting. I would paint some metaphorical scenes, but I always tried to paint them in a realistic way, like whatever. If there was an eyeball floating in the sky or whatever, it looked like a fucking eyeball. Whereas now my painting has become or after that first experience, it was like, boom, the blending of colors, the texture of the paint, the applying like small seams. Like I oftentimes when I'm painting in this style, I'll paint things inside the painting that nobody knows are there. Um, so that's a great question, and I'd love for other people to explore that as well. Just think about that. How different would you be? I mean, LSD has helped me be so much more childlike and playful. MDMA, the same way, has helped me be a lot more compassionate for towards my children. That's maybe one of the biggest impacts that I see on me personally in my work with psychedelics is that I am a better father because of my psychedelic experiences. I know that it has allowed me to be more patient and more considerate and more compassionate with my children, more tender, where I would probably still be that guy that spanks his kids and shit, if I hadn't been engaged in these practices.
Worked on you when you was growing up.
Yeah. Yeah, my father and I have an incredible relationship right now too.
You turned out okay. That's my
Yeah,
favorite thing.
you turned out okay. Yeah, I just have to use drugs in order to, get back to my center. Yeah.
Gosh.
No, it's a process, life is finding its way. We're all moving again, like that spiral of that first mushroom trip that I experienced. We're just getting closer and closer to our center. We're getting more and more kind of advanced in our consciousness. And I would never want my parents to think that I'm not grateful for what they did for me. But at the same time, I don't want my parents to think that I'm obliged to be around them if they're going to be, judging and hating on me. None of us need that, y'all. We need to put ourselves in situations where we are around people who validate us, where we are in company of those who love us for who we are and don't want us to change, and they don't want to criticize and condemn us. Yes, a good friend will ask questions and will try to help you get to your center quicker. That's what Courtney has done so well for me and so many people. But all the judgment, like that shit is gone. It's just getting us nowhere. If we haven't seen that by now, you got to wonder what it's going to take. Maybe mushrooms for everybody, unless you're schizophrenic or have a history of bipolar 1. There are outliers. So anyway, don't want to encourage just anybody and everybody to do psychedelics for sure. Only use psychedelics in a safe, legal environment where you're supported by someone who has experience. Fucking Oregon. I just want to scream. I can't believe that they're like not requiring facilitators to have even one experience with psilocybin. Like that is the number one harm reduction practice. You've got to know when you are in a place where your ego is dissolving, where you're losing your freaking mind, you've got to have somebody there that can look you in the eyes and say, I've been there. You're going to get through this, and I'm going to be with you until you get through it.
Well, it just shows that they don't believe that this is anything other than a pharmaceutical. And the only reason at which that they're actually going to be giving it to people in the form of a mushroom and not an extracted psilocybin tablet or a synthetic derivative is because of the price.
Seems
to
like
go
it.
into that.
Yeah, it seems like that. So, it is what it is. It's going to take some time. We're going to be learning as we go. We're building the ship as we set off to sail, so to speak. How can you be optimally empathic if you have no experience with the sacrament? Emilio, my friend, it's baffling to me. I can't believe that is even a conversation that's being had by adults. I just can't. Like, who think of any profession, driving. Like, are you going to trust someone to teach you to drive who's never driven a fucking car? No. And this is like such a much more powerful tool than a car. So I'm here when you need me, Oregon. If I can be of any help, I'm here. I want to help. I know I'm a little eccentric. I'm a little different. I'm not in a lab coat, but I've got a hell of a lot of experience with mushrooms, and I think I could really add some value to what's going on there. Just saying. Anybody else that wants to explore these medicines, these sacraments, scientifically with someone who has a long history of applied research, I'm here. There's so much that we're going to be able to uncover about healing in terms of the origins of healing through the use of psychedelics. It's vibration. Same thing. Again, I love that I'm coming back to this first mushroom trip because it just illustrates how powerful, whatever it is, 43 minus 19, that's how many years it's been. Like, this trip still showing me it's all energy. It's all energy. And that's how we heal. That's how we grow. That's how we transmit information. It's all energy. So thank you all for your energy in sharing with us today. A little different. We didn't have anybody hop in on the conversations, but that's okay. Oh yeah, addiction and dying. There's all kinds of benefits to psilocybin. And we can talk about more of that later. But again, I really feel confident in saying that it all comes down to calibration of our energy. So much love to everybody. Thank you all for joining. Next time, let's get some people involved in the conversation. I appreciate and love all the commentary, but you're also very welcome to hop in and be a part of the conversation in real time. Go check out episode of Psilocybin Says. We got merch available. Go and check out Sanctuary Service. We're having some amazing groups on Sundays, 10 Eastern time. It's open to the public. The link is available on the homepage of sanctuary.org. That's sanctuary with a P. And if you got anything else, I don't know, give Tristan a call. His number and address is... All right. Thank you, Tristan. Much love, everybody.